Henry's Big Move by Pete Young, Matthew Roy, Ethan Miguel, and Daniel Tome. My family had been looking for work for a while. We had traveled from Montgomery, Alabama, because it was so hard to find work there, to Chicago. Colored people like us had very few opportunities in the southern states. My little sister, Georgia, was already 7 years old, and she still hadn't even been inside a classroom. And I, Henry, am 9, and I haven't either. Our parents, Mama and Papa, had been looking for work ever since they got fired from their jobs working in the rice fields last year. However, our friend Steven had told us that many blacks had found jobs in some of the northern states, so we began to travel to Chicago. Once we got to Chicago, we found an organization called the NAACP. The NAACP was an organization that provided services to black people who were struggling to get settled, and they helped Mama and Papa find a place to live. The house was fairly small, though. It had a kitchen, a bathroom, and one bedroom for all 4 of us. It wasn't really what we had hoped for, but we would be alright. The next day after settling into our new house, Mama and Papa headed out at 7 o'clock in the morning to find a job. Since our parents were new in town, and colored people at that, it was very difficult for them to find work. The first job they tried to find was at a steel mill, but the boss didn't like people like us, so they turned us down, and they had to continue their search somewhere else. Sadly, Mama and Papa did not find what they were looking for, but they had found a place for us to go to school. Georgia and I were very excited, especially since neither of us had ever been inside a school before. My sister could hardly sit still. Mama and Papa had actually gone into the classroom earlier that day and talked with the teacher. Her name was Mrs. Jones, and she was a very nice lady. She said she would be delighted to have Georgia and I in her class. The first day of school was absolutely incredible. I felt like I was in a different world. I had never seen anything like this before. Learning to read and write were 2 of the best things I had ever done, and all of the other children were very nice, as was Miss Jones. After a long day at school, we came home to find our Mama and Papa were once again not able to find a job. We were running low on money, and that night for dinner we all had to split 1 loaf of bread and went to sleep in our cramped sleeping quarters. Papa said that this would change, though, because he would soon be able to get a job. We woke up relatively hungry, and each of us had 1 piece of toast before leaving. We had the privilege of going to school, but Mama and Papa still had to go out and look for work. When we arrived back at the house, though, Papa had some fantastic news. He had found a job at an auto shop as an assembly line worker. He told us that it paid a whole $2 a day. While we were celebrating Papa's success, our neighbor approached us and congratulated Papa. He had told him that he knew how it felt to get a job, but he had just been fired from his job and had been very devastated. He told us not to get our hopes up because it was so hard for us to find work, and even if you could find it, it was very hard to keep it. But Papa wasn't the kind of man to get worried by a story. He went to work the next day perfectly happy, thinking that nothing would go wrong. However, unbelievably, Papa got fired from his job, and it had only been the 2nd day. His boss didn't even give him a reason. He just told him that he was no longer employed there, and Papa had to leave. When he got back home, he told us all about it. He told us about how unfairly his boss had treated him. I asked him, "Papa, can they really do that?" He told me that that was just the way it was, and that there was nothing we could do about it. He said that even Georgia and I would need to find jobs, because it would be much harder for him to find work now. Soon after he had just told us about the bad news, he ran into our neighbor again, who had just told us the exact same story. They talked for a while, and Papa mentioned that us children would even have to quit school to support the family. Papa now realized what our neighbor was going through. Our neighbor had told us that he was getting pretty sick of us colored people losing their jobs. He told Papa about an idea that he had had for quite some time now, but he had never really pursued it. He said that if he had been fired again, that he would try to make his own business rather than working for dishonest employers. He told Papa that his brother was a barber in New York, and that he had been doing pretty well on his own. He asked Papa if he wanted to invest and work in the business with him. Papa accepted his offer, and that became the day when Papa and our neighbor opened their very own barbershop. The end.